The front panel of the Huawei Mate 30 has been leaked today in China, and it shows a lot of changes from the previous version, not least what looks to be an OLED screen where the Mate 20 had a LCD screen. So a change at the top because the Mate 20 had a singular water drop notch for one camera at the front there. It now looks to be a dual camera setup on the front and an under screen fingerprint sensor unit, which means this screen must be an OLED screen. The top cutout there has two perforations, a bigger one and a smaller one. One is obviously the front facing camera, and I assume that the second one is a depth sensor or maybe some sort of secondary lens to help with AI capabilities. It's probably unlikely that Huawei are going to put a secondary camera in there because there's really not much use for that. Having a secondary camera that would either serve as an ultra wide or a zoom isn't likely. I would suggest that it would follow a similar type of setup to the Galaxy S10 Plus with its dual camera there, which is a main sensor and a depth sensor. That would make sense because we know Huawei focuses quite heavily on AI capabilities, so assume depth effects or portrait effects using that secondary sensor. We did see a leak a while back at the Huawei Developer Conference, a really fuzzy and blurry image of what looked to be the Mate 30, not the Mate 30 Pro, because that has a much larger cutout, and this confirms it today. So it looks like we're looking at a dual camera setup and an OLED screen, which is a big upgrade over the Huawei Mate 20. The addition of the underscreen fingerprint is very good too. That brings it up in line with what we've seen in the P30 and P30 Pro. Both of them have OLED screens and underscreen fingerprint sensors, so it makes complete sense that the Mate 30 lineup will also follow that route and go for all OLED and all underscreen fingerprint sensors. Redmi have also released more information on the Redmi Note 8 Pro today, but first, news from Vivo, who said that next week we are going to see the Vivo NEX. This is a more expensive, more experimental phone from Vivo, and we know some of the specs of this already. Not to mention, Vivo already showed us a picture of the Vivo NEX last week with its new waterfall display, but we've got some more information. So thanks to registry information, this thing looks to be coming with a Snapdragon 855 Plus, 44 watt fast charging, UFS 3.0, and a big battery, which isn't surprising. Vivo just released the Vivo iQOO with pretty much exactly the same specs. So expect all of the insides of that, just with a different and definitely more modern design. So according to Universe Ice, he sent this out in China, so it is in Chinese, but he said that the Vivo NEX is going to be completely buttonless. So this is a really interesting device for me. A lot of people are going to be put off by this, but this is definitely something to watch out for. He's saying that there will be no buttons on this device and it will have a waterfall display. So the screen will curve heavily around at the sides. There will be no space for buttons. Buttons will be on the side of the screen, and it will use haptics to give you feedback when you press the virtual buttons. Very, very interesting device. A lot of people are just going to say, no way, I want buttons. That will also definitely be coming with a 5G version too. So before we get onto Redmi, we know that Oppo are releasing the Reno 2 series in India next week. And it looks like we have the Reno 2 Z or Z, the Reno 2 and the Reno A. They all come at different price points and with different specifications. There's also some live images and lots of leaks about this series. So according to this leak, the Reno 2 has a 6.5-inch screen with a 20:9 aspect ratio, and it's keeping that shark fin pop-up camera. So this leak confirms a lot of other information and leaks that I got from China. All of the information that I've got from China and this leak is exactly the same, so we can be pretty sure that it's correct. Then moving on to the Reno 2Z, it comes with a MediaTek processor and just a normal centered rising camera, and the 2F is similar, that uses a different MediaTek processor. So expect these to be coming in the mid and budget category, which is probably why Oppo chose those MediaTek processors, because they've just released Realme phones in India which look to have a lot of the same specs. And lastly, moving on to that Redmi Note 8 news. Now, Redmi have been themselves comparing the new Redmi Note 8 Pro, which hasn't even been released yet, but we seem to know everything about it. They themselves have been comparing this to the Honor 9X. So now we know exactly the type of phone that Redmi are going for with this release. So some benchmark scores have been released of the Redmi Note 8 Pro and the 9X, so we can see the differences. The 9X is definitely more powerful. It beats the Redmi Note 8 Pro, no doubt about it. However, I expect the Redmi Note 8 Pro to come in a little bit cheaper than the Honor 9X. And of course, the Honor 9X only has that singular camera with a depth sensor at the back, whereas the Redmi Note 8 Pro is rocking that quad camera setup. So Redmi say they have a function where if you are just outside of Wi-Fi or your Wi-Fi is quite weak, that it will use both LTE and Wi-Fi together to improve your network speeds so your game doesn't crash. It compared it to the Honor 9X. It looks really great in the video, but remember, this is an advert. I've used the Honor 9X and I was very impressed overall with that phone, with the speed of the processor and the connection speeds. Of course, Xiaomi and Redmi will say that they are better, but let's take that with a pinch of salt too and wait for real world tests. Anyway, that's it for now, but I'll see you in the next one.